Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Deputy Thomas Burley, B-A-U-R-L-E.
Burley, I said it wrong. I apologize.
That's okay.
And how are you employed?
Manatee County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been so employed?
Going on 23 years.
And what are your current duties with the Sheriff's Office?
Patrol.
And what are your daily duties as a patrol deputy?
Patrolling my zone, which is Lakewood Ranch currently, and taking calls for service.
And back in September of 2020, were you in the same position?
Yes, ma'am.
And would your duties have been the same?
Yes, ma'am.
And to become a law enforcement officer many moon ago, what kind of training or education did you obtain?
It'd be a law enforcement academy here in Manatee County.
And then since then, do you continue to have courses that are offered through the Sheriff's Office that you can take if you'd like?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I want to draw your attention to September 27th, 2020. Do you recall if you were working days or nights then?
I was working second shift, which would be 3 p.m. to 3 a.m.
And you said your zone now is in Lakewood Ranch.
Yes, ma'am.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Our county's, the sheriff divides the whole county up into zones.
Correct.
Okay. And what zone is that you're in now?
My zone is North 80, which is Lakewood Ranch, which covers from State Road 70 to University Parkway, from I-75 to Lorraine Road.
And so on September 27th of 2020, what zone were you in if it was something
North
else?
80.
North 80.
Yes, ma'am.
And during your shift that day, did you respond to 11327 White Rock Terrace?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was the nature of the call?
It came out originally as a 911 call that a female had come to the neighbor's house and she had a gun with her.
And when you hear a call such as that, does it affect how you respond to the scene?
Yes, ma'am.
And how does it do that?
It's dependent on the situation. Sometimes it's priority lights and sirens. Sometimes it's a normal response.
And how about once you arrive at the scene, does it affect how you would react when you got to the scene?
Yes, ma'am. Per protocol, we park a minimum a few houses away from the actual caller's address.
And is that based on the fact that there was a firearm?
Correct.
Thank you. And did you do that in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you know how long it took you to arrive since you were in your same zone? If you had to guess.
That's an adjacent. That's North 70. It's
Oh,
an
I'm
adjacent
sorry.
zone. I would guess probably 15 minutes.
And I think I didn't ask the right questions earlier. You were in zone North 80 then?
Correct.
Where was this call?
North 70.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
I messed that up. And when you arrived, what did you do?
Again, per protocol, I parked a few houses away. I observed a vehicle parked on the opposite side of the street directly across from the 911 caller's residence. So I took up a position behind that vehicle because I was the only deputy on scene at the time. I was waiting there behind the vehicle for additional deputies to arrive on scene.
And did they arrive?
Yes, ma'am.
And how long were you there, you think, by yourself?
With a minute, maybe.
And once the additional deputies arrive, what happens?
The second deputy arrived was Deputy Vreeland, which that was his zone. Dispatch still had the 911 caller on the phone. So we had the Deputy Vreeland told dispatch to have the 911 caller tell the female to come out with her hands up.
And did she do that?
Yes, ma'am, she did.
And were you able to observe her at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you make any observations about her person?
Just she was visibly upset.
And did you see any injuries?
Not that I observed, no.
And did you notice anything about her clothes? Was it ripped or have
No,
any?
ma'am. She was wearing a sports bra, shorts, and sneakers.
And they seem to be intact?
Seemed to be intact, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Was she saying anything when she exited the home?
No, ma'am.
What happened to her once she exited?
Deputy Vreeland proceeded forward to the middle of the road and placed her into handcuffs. And being as my car was the closest, we brought her to my car, placed her in the back seat of my car.
And why would...
Judge, can we approach for a moment?
Yes.
And I think I was asking you why she was placed in cuffs and put in the police car.
Due to the circumstances and officer safety.
Thank you, sir. And at that time, actually, strike that. What was the next thing you did?
Other deputies were arriving on scene, so I yelled to any deputies that were there, there were multiple, to watch Miss Benefield in the back of my car, while myself, Deputy Vreeland, and I believe it was Detective Jones, proceeded to the house to clear the residence.
And would that have been that house next door to the 911 callers?
Correct. Directly next
And-
door.
Thank you. And did you enter that home?
Yes, ma'am.
And how did you enter the home?
Through the front door.
Did you notice anything outside the house?
Yes, ma'am. There was a large moving van, I believe it was a U-Haul in the driveway, and the garage door was open. Looked like they were moving stuff.
The big door
Yes,
was up? Okay. And when you went in through the front door, were you the first person or was Deputy Vreeland in front of
Deputy
you?
Vreeland was first, I was second, and Detective Jones was third.
And was the door locked, if you know?
No.
And what happened once you got inside?
As we entered the house, I observed the first bedroom to the left. I observed just a pair of legs, basically just above the knee down. Deputy Vreeland immediately took that room to check it. Myself and Detective Jones proceeded through the rest of the house to clear the rest of the house.
And what are you doing when you clear a house?
Making sure there's nobody else in there that could be hurt or injured or any threats.
And did you find anyone else in the home other than the set of legs that you left with Deputy Vreeland?
No, ma'am.
And did you ever go back into that bedroom?
No, ma'am.
And did you remain in the residence?
No, ma'am.
Where did you go?
Myself and Detective Jones immediately left the residence, and I went straight to my patrol car and proceeded to get inside my patrol car to sit with Miss Benefield.
Your Honor, can I have just a second?
Yes.
At some point, did you ask, well, was EMS on scene when you were on scene?
There was so much going on. I don't know if they had arrived while we were in clearing the house or they arrived right after. I'm not sure exactly when they arrived.
Okay, but at some point they were there.
Yes, ma'am.
And did you ask them to check Miss Benefield to make sure
Yes,
she was
ma'am.
okay? And did she require any medical treatment?
No.
What was the next thing that you did?
Sat in my car with Miss Benefield and waited till I was directed what to do.
And were you eventually given some direction?
Yes, I was advised to transport her down to the main sheriff's office in Bradenton for interviews with
And that's
detectives.
the one by the mall?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And once you got there, how long is that ride?
20 to 30 minutes.
Once you got there, what did you do?
Once upon my arrival, escorted Miss Benefield up to the entrance where I believe it was Detective Justin Warren was there, and I believe one of Miss Benefield's attorneys was there as well.
And did you conduct any further investigation in this case?
No, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any questions for the defense. Any more questions?
Cross?
Yes, sir.
Afternoon, Deputy.
Good afternoon, sir.
A few questions. If you don't understand any of my questions, please just ask me to repeat them.
Yes, sir.
I think you told us Miss Benefield's condition emotionally on that day when you saw her was she was hysterical.
Visibly upset.
In distinguishing between visibly upset and hysterical, can we agree that you felt she may have been in shock?
I honestly wouldn't know. I just observed her to be visibly upset and crying. I didn't see any hysteria or anything like that involved.
Okay, you're basically like any deputy trained in basic first aid, no?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so you would recognize shock if you saw it.
Possibly.
All right. Do you recall giving a deposition in this case, Deputy Brawl, on August 20th, 2021?
Yes, sir.
Okay. May I approach the witness?
Yes.
Let me hand this to you and see.
Sure. I have a copy as well.
If that refreshes your recollection at all?
Yeah, honestly, I don't even recall everything I said in the deposition due to the time frame.
And in seeing it now, does it help refresh your recollection?
Yeah.
Okay. So, once again, on that particular day, did you think she may have been in shock?
According to my deposition, yes.
May I approach you, Ron?
Yes.
Thank you. You told us that when she was initially placed in your squad car, she had on a sports bra.
That's what I would say it was, yes.
Yeah, no, that's fine. My question runs to whether or not at some point following that, a request was made and a deputy brought a cover shirt for Miss Benefield to wear.
I don't recall a request being made. I just recall Deputy Vreeland bringing out a shirt and pair of shoes. I don't know who made that request.
She put the shirt on.
I believe so, yes.
I want to ask you for a minute about report writing. Did you write a report that reflects your participation in this particular case?
I did a supplemental report, yes, sir.
Okay, that's pretty routine for deputies, is it not?
Yes, sir.
In fact, Deputy Burrell, would it be a fair statement to say that in Police Academy they actually train you in report writing and how important it is?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that would be because, can you even give us an estimation of how many calls you might respond to in a month?
It'd be very hard.
Okay. And by documenting significant things in your report, you don't have to rely on your memory 8 months, 2 years, 3 years down the road.
Most of the time, yeah. As with any call, sometimes you remember things after the fact.
Of course. So I want to ask you if you independently recall on May 7, 2018, responding to a call involving a suspicious person in the driveway of Miss Benefield's home. That would have been right next door to the home that she came walking out of.
I have no recollection of that, sir.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor? Let me pass this to you, Deputy Burrell, see if it refreshes your recollection. Feel free to peruse it.
I don't recall this one, sir.
Is that your name?
It's got my name on it,
Okay.
but I don't recall it.
You don't doubt that it's a
No, I don't doubt it's mine.
report that was authored by you?
You know, sometimes the system gets mixed up, our electronic report writing system.
Yeah.
Still happens today. Sometimes you'll go to write a report and somebody else's, another deputy's name inadvertently
Sure.
ends up as the primary on that. If you don't catch it, it stays that way.
Yeah. At least as we sit here now, you don't have any reason to suspect that's the case, as opposed to it being an
It's
earlier.
possible.
Let me finish.
Okay.
As opposed to it being an earlier report that you compiled that you just don't have any memory of this far forward.
It's possible.
Okay. So, with the court's permission, if that memorializes your perception of that call on that day, I want to ask you a couple of questions, if I may.
Again, I don't recall this, so I don't think I can answer questions related to
Deputy, when you respond to a call and you fill out a incident or investigation report, among other information that you enter routinely into those reports is the identity of the reporting officer, no?
No. Again, as I previously stated, if you're one of the responding deputies, sometimes that was an old system. We're on a new system, still does the same thing. Sometimes it can inadvertently put one of the other deputies on there as the primary. So if you don't catch it, the report goes through with that other deputy's name on it. So it's all electronic.
Now, that's 2 times you've explained that. So are you telling us that that is the standard practice, that dispatch makes a mistake and
It's not
the
dispatch,
deputies
sir.
don't catch it?
It's not dispatch, it's
It
just a
would
mistake.
be the exception. Could we agree?
It could possibly, it can happen, and it does
Okay.
happen,
So
yes.
now, let me ask my question to you again.
Okay.
Among the other information that goes into an incident report, does it identify the deputy who is making the report?
Usually, yes.
All right. Does this identify the deputy that was making the report?
It identifies me.
Now, what I would like to ask you, Deputy Burrell, is who the complainant was. That's another piece of information that's inserted in a report, is it not?
Correct.
Okay, and the nature of the complaint as well.
Correct.
Okay, so let me,
Sustained.
what was the objection, Your Honor? I'm sorry.
Lack of foundation.
Does this report that you've seen include the information that we just discussed, the nature of the call and who the complainant was?
Yes.
All right. Now, without leaving it to your memory,
Okay, if you could approach, please.
in the usual course of events, Deputy Burrell, when you enter information into an incident report, is it fresh in your mind?
Say that again, sorry?
In the usual course of events, when you fill out an incident report, is the information fresh in your mind?
Usually, yes.
Okay. And while it's fresh in your mind, you place it into the report as to such things as the date and the time and the location, the name of the complainant and the nature of the call.
Correct.
All right. Now, I think you've told us that sometimes mistakes are made in these reports and they're attributed to different deputies.
Correct.
I think you also told us that that's the exception rather than the rule.
Correct.
Do you have any reason to believe that this particular report is that exception or not? Do you have any information that leads you?
Again, I don't recall that particular call that you're speaking of with that paper, but it's most likely was me.
Okay. Now, may I proceed, Your Honor?
It's a single objection.
Oh, this point.
Thank you. Would you tell us, Deputy Burrell, who the complainant was for that call?
Ashley Benefield,
Would you tell us what the date of the complaint was?
May 7th, 2018.
And will you tell us what the nature of the call was?
According to the narrative here,
Don't read the narrative. Just tell us the nature of the
I
call.
have to read through the narrative to be able to tell you because I don't recall this.
You got to take that up with Judge White.
What's been allowed is not detailed, just a
Correct, yeah.
very general description.
Yes, sir. I understand. Yeah.
Okay, and the nature of the call?
Person in their driveway suspected to be Douglas Benefield.
And that was at what address?
That would be 11331 White Rock Terrace.
And what was the time of the call?
21:54 hours, so that would be 9:54 p.m.
Nighttime.
Yes, sir.
All right, Your Honor, I have another report, but we have an objection. So Deputy Burrow, I have one other question for you about one of your calls. Apparently you cover a lot of ground.
Yes, sir.
I want to ask you if you recall, and now this is going back to 2019, specifically December 8th, 2019, you obviously worked the night shift at 20:55. Suspicious person call in progress at (11332) White Rock Terrace in Bradenton. Do you recall that?
No, sir.
Thanks very much, Deputy.
Redirect?
Yes, Judge. I don't have anything, Judge. Thank you.
All right, can this witness be released?
Yes.
Defense?
Yes, he can be.
Keep him.
May I inquire?
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
John Jones, Jones.
And how are you employed?
I'm a detective with Manatee County Sheriff's Office
And how long have you been so employed?
since September of 2014.
And what are your current duties at the Sheriff's Office?
I am a property detective currently.
And does that mean you investigate property crimes?
Yes,
Okay. And back in September of 2020, were you in that same unit or a different unit?
a different unit,
And what was that unit?
the Violent Crimes Task Force.
And what are your primary duties as a member of the Violent Crimes Task Force?
Investigate violent or aggravated circumstance, respond to same.
And when you, what kind of education did you obtain to become a law enforcement officer?
I went through the basic law enforcement academy in Valencia and Orlando.
And since then, have you continued to take classes through the Sheriff's Office?
Yes,
And do you take some on providing first responder aid as a first responder?
yes,
Thank you. I want to draw your attention to September 27th, 2020. As a member of VCTF at the time, did you work a specific shift?
I worked 3 p.m. to 3 a.m.
And was that the correct, or is that the shift you were working at that time?
Yes, it is.
Sorry, I got distracted. And did you work, does VCTF have a zone, or are they in the whole county?
They're a countywide task force.
And during your shift on the 27th of September 2020, did you respond to a call on White Rock Terrace?
Yes, I did.
And is that here in Manatee County?
It is.
And how did you find out about this call?
It was dispatched over the radio.
And what was the nature of the call?
Shooting with injuries, I do believe.
And does the nature of the call affect how you respond?
It does.
And how did you respond to this call?
Lights and sirens activated.
And is that because of the fact that there was a shooting?
Yes.
Do you remember how long it took you to get over to White Rock Terrace?
Not very long.
Where you were close in the area?
I was at State Road 64 in Lakewood Ranch Boulevard when it came out.
And what kind of area is this where this home is?
Residential
Like a subdivision?
subdivision, yes.
And when you arrived, were other law enforcement officers already on scene?
Yes.
Several or just a few?
A few.
And what did you do when you first arrived?
I was asked to ensure nobody come out of the back of a residence.
And,
nobody came out of the back of the residence.
okay. And after that, what did you do?
I went to the front of the residence to clear the house to ensure there was no person inside the house.
And was that the same house, or was the back of the residence the neighboring house?
Back of the residence was the neighboring house.
So you started at the back of the house next door to the one where you eventually entered?
Yes.
Okay. And you said you went over to the neighboring house. Did you notice anything about the outside?
Can't recall.
That's fine. And do you recall how you entered that house?
Yes, through the front door of
Thank
the
you.
residence.
And what was the purpose for going in there?
To ensure that there was no person inside that was armed and to render aid to anybody inside.
And did you find anyone inside the home?
I did.
And who was it? Or was it a man or a woman?
It was a man.
And where was he?
He was in a bedroom.
And was he standing up or?
No, he was lying down.
And can you kind of describe what you observed in that bedroom?
Yes, I observed the male laying down on the floor, sort of in the middle of the floor. He had a gunshot wound to his right about here, and then another one down by his leg. There was blood under his right leg.
And was this room set up with a bed and a dresser and all those things, or did it look different?
It looked like it was empty.
And based on that room and the other rooms, did it appear someone was either moving in or out of that home?
Yes, it did.
And you've told us you observed what you believe to be gunshot wounds. Did you make any other observations of him?
Yes, he was wearing gray shorts and a gray shirt, or a dark colored shirt.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been pre-marked as states 2 and 3. You take a look and tell me if you recognize those items.
Yes.
I'm just going to leave you for 1 second. Other than, how do you recognize them?
This is the shirt that the defendant or a victim was wearing.
And that's states 2, and as to states 3.
These are the shorts the victim was wearing.
And other than having been repackaged for trial, do they appear to be in the same or substantially the same condition when you saw them?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time the state would ask to enter and publish states 2 and 3.
No objection.
Received?
And Checo, I'm just going to hold this up. This is states 2. This is the shirt the victim you found was wearing.
Yes.
And it appears to have been cut. Do you know how that happened?
Yes, I cut it
And what was the purpose of cutting it?
to check for injuries.
And then this is states 3. These are the shorts that he was wearing?
Yes.
Okay. And they're also cut. Did you do that?
I did not.
Do you know how that would have occurred?
Likely by emergency medical services.
Is that normal for EMS to have to remove clothing like you did the shirt?
Yes.
As to these shorts in states 3, can you look at them and tell me what the size is?
Men's 30.
Thank you. And as to the shirt in states 2, can you look at that and tell me what the size is?
My glasses. Hold on a minute. Size small.
Thank you, sir. Other than cutting his shirt, well, let me ask you this first. Did you touch him?
I did.
And how did he feel?
He was cool to the touch.
And did you attempt to provide medical aid?
I did.
And how so?
I began packing wounds to initiate CPR before EMS arrived on scene.
And what does that mean, packing wounds?
Putting gauze over wounds to keep whatever's inside when you're doing compressions.
And did you eventually start CPR?
No.
And why not?
EMS arrived on scene.
And were they very far behind you when you arrived?
Not very far, but I can't remember exactly how long.
And while you were attempting to provide medical aid, was somebody else taking some photos of the scene as you found it?
Yes.
And I'm going to show you states 18, 19, and 20. Will you take a look and tell me if you recognize those photos?
18 is me checking for the pulse on the victim.
Just take a look at them real quick and tell me if you recognize them first.
Yes.
Okay. And
Yes.
and are those photos that we just discussed that were taken while you attempted to do aid?
Yes.
And do they appear to fairly and accurately depict the scene as you recall it from September 27th, 2020?
Yes.
Your Honor, the state would ask to enter states 18, 19, and 20 and publish the same.
May I just see them, Your Honor?
Of course.
No objection.
States 18, 19, and 20 will be received.
Detective, I'm
So when
going
you
to...
say publish, you mean up here?
Yes, sir.
All right. Get the lights, please.
I'm going to show you states 18 and ask you to describe what is depicted in 18.
That is me checking the victim for a pulse after the AED pads have been placed.
And that's you on the right, that's your head.
Yes, right here.
And on the left, is that another deputy?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And you said after placing the AED, what is that?
It's a defibrillator.
And is that the stickers we see on his body?
Yes, those pads there.
Thank you. And I'm going to show you states 19.
States 19.
Yes. Is this the victim as you found him?
Yes, it is.
And those are the shorts we just saw.
Yes.
Thank you. And then states 20.
Yes.
Is this the position you found when you found him? Is this the same position he was in?
Yes.
Okay. And in the right top right of this picture, there appears to be something tan. Do you know what that is?
It appears that it's a mattress stood up against the wall.
Thank you. Thank you, Detective. Did you make any other observations of evidence in that bedroom?
Yes.
And what was that?
There were 4 spent shell casings and 1 projectile in the room.
And a projectile, is that what I might call a bullet?
Yes.
Okay. And did you see anything, did you do anything else in the house after EMS took over aid?
No, we exited the residence and it was secured pending a search warrant.
And did you conduct any other investigation in this case?
No, I did not.
Judge, can I have just a moment?
Of course.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you, Detective.
Yes, ma'am.
Cross?
Couple brief questions. Deputy Jones, afternoon.
Afternoon, sir.
You were not, or you were, the first deputy that made contact with Mr. Benefield.
I was one of the first. I couldn't tell you I was the first, but I was one of the first in the house, yes.
Were any other deputies in contact with Mr. Benefield prior to yourself?
Not to my knowledge, no.
All right. Had Mr. Benefield been moved at any time?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Did you ever witness anyone moving him?
Yes.
Other deputies
EMS.
and the EMS?
Just EMS.
Just EMS?
Yes, sir.
No other deputies?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And EMS, correct me if I'm wrong, did they drag him out of the room?
I believe so, yes.
That's all. Thank you.
Redirect.
I don't have anything, Judge.
Can this witness be released? State?
Yes.
Defense?
Yes.
Sir, you're released from your subpoena. You're free to go.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Tyler James Ackerman, Ackerman.
And by whom are you employed?
I work for the Manatee County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you worked for the Sheriff's Office?
Just about 9.5 years.
And what are your current duties with the Sheriff's Office?
Currently, I'm a violent crimes task force detective.
And were those the same duties you had in September of 2020?
Yes, ma'am.
And what are your daily activities as a violent crimes task force detective?
What area?
What do you do?
Oh, okay. So we'll go out to assist patrol with calls for service pertaining to shootings, stabbings, robberies, stuff of that nature. And then we'll also assist other detectives with investigations.
Thank you. And what kind of training did you obtain to become a law enforcement officer?
Prior to becoming a law enforcement officer, I went to Police Academy, which is a full term for 6 months. And then after that, there's additional training that we receive at the agency to include in-service training, about a 3-month program that'll get us ready for the road, and then a 3.5-month program on the road to be able to pass to become a solo deputy.
And does that training in the academy and going forward involve firearms?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did you do before you were a law enforcement officer?
Prior to law enforcement, before I went back to school to become a police officer, I was in the United States Army.
And when you were in the
Sorry, I didn't hear.
I was in the United States Army, sir.
Thank you.
And when you were in the Army, did you also receive firearms training?
Yes.
And when you were in the Army, were you in a position where you carried a gun regularly?
Yes, I was an infantryman. That was my job.
And as a law enforcement officer, do you, and a member of VCTF, do you carry a gun every day?
Yes, ma'am.
And are you required to go out to the range and make sure you know how guns operate?
Correct. We're required annually to pass a test, but then we're also given the opportunity to go out to the range to practice and do more, because it takes more than shooting once a year to be proficient.
And do you do that?
Yes, ma'am.
And I want to ask you a little bit about September 27th, 2020. As a member of VCTF, were you working a specific shift?
Yes, ma'am. We work 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. That's our standard shift, unless something else that's happening in the county dictates that we change it.
And do you work in a specific area?
We have the entire county as our jurisdiction.
And during your shift that night, did you respond to White Rock Terrace?
Yes, ma'am.
And how were you informed of this call?
I believe it was through the radio. There was a shooting that was dispatched. And I couldn't tell you exactly how many of the members of my team, but we were together on a meal break.
And how long did it take you to get over there, if you recall?
I couldn't give an exact time frame, but maybe about 10, 15 minutes. I'm not 100% sure.
When you arrived, what did you observe going on?
When I first got to the scene, there was an ambulance that was parked in front of, I believe, the incident location. And there was a stretcher that was being loaded into the back of the ambulance, where there was a male that I visually observed on the stretcher.
And did you see a female?
Yes, there was a female that was being placed in the back of a marked patrol car, I believe. But I saw her for seconds, and then she was placed inside the vehicle.
And were there a lot of law enforcement on scene?
Yes.
And what, if anything, were you tasked with doing?
Initially, when we get to a scene, we wait to see what needs to continue to be investigated or what people need help with. And there was information that said that the defendant went to the neighbor's house after the incident that took place. So myself, Detective Din, and I believe somebody from patrol went to that residence to make contact with the neighbor.
And what was your purpose of making contact?
To come have an interview completed with the neighbor to see what he knew happened.
And that home, and I apologize if you just said it, is directly next door.
Correct. If you're looking at the front of the incident location, it's the first house immediately to the left.
And what happened when you got over there?
When we went over there, Detective Din completed the interview with the neighbor, and then after the interview, we collected a multi-waiver for the house.
And what is that?
Multi-waiver is a form. It's 2-sided, and it has multiple different agreements that we can have. So if we go to a scene, for this particular case, the multi-waiver is something that we collect from the person to get consent to enter and search their house with their permission in lieu of having a search warrant written, sent to a judge.
And was Mr. Sant okay with you entering his house?
Yeah, I believe so, yes. I believe he signed it, but I have not seen the multi-waiver in 4 years. So.
Okay. And were you listening in on the interview, and I don't want you to tell me what was said between Detective Den and Mr. Sant?
I was there for a portion of the interview, but not the entire thing.
Was something that you heard in the interview, did it cause you to go do something else?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what was that?
To collect a firearm that was inside the residence.
Okay. And did you enter Mr. Sant's home?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you locate the firearm?
Yes.
And where was it?
If you were looking at the front door, as soon as the front door opens, immediately to your left on the ground was the firearm, and it was just below a window that was next to the door.
And what, if any, observations did you make about the firearm?
Initially, the first observation was that there was a magazine inside the firearm, appeared to be a semi-automatic black pistol, and the slide, which is the portion of the top of the pistol that retracts to unload a round after it's fired and then load a new round, was partially to, it wasn't completely seated in the forward position. There's a very small amount of it that was to the back.
And did you examine the gun on scene to determine why it was like that?
Yes.
And what did you see?
When I saw that, the firearm, you could see a little bit of ammunition or a round of ammunition inside the chamber. But then after that, that was the only observation I could see with it on the ground.
And did it appear, and was that a live round?
When I cleared the firearm, the ammunition that was inside the chamber was an unfired live round that was still able to be fired, or appeared to be able to be fired.
And I guess I should ask you, once you find a firearm, what do you do with it?
Generally, the first task is to make it safe, clear the firearm.
And so what does that mean?
So it would be pointed in a safe direction. The magazine is always the first thing to be removed from the firearm. So if you pull the slide to the rear and the magazine is still inside the firearm, one round will eject, but it will subsequently load another round into the chamber, which would make it still a live weapon.
And so did you remove the magazine?
Yeah, the magazine was removed first, and then after that, the slide was locked to the rear to prevent the slide from going forward. And when the slide was pulled to the rear, that's when the live round of ammunition was ejected out of the chamber.
Thank you. And at some point, did you take a photograph of the firearm?
Yes.
I'd like to show you what's been pre-marked as State 17. Will you take a look and tell me if you recognize that photo?
Yes.
How do you recognize it?
That's the firearm that I photographed and collected.
And does that photograph appear to accurately depict the firearm
Yes.
on that day? Your Honor, the state would ask to enter and publish State 17.
Mr. Taylor, is there any objection to the admission of State 17?
No, sir.
Received.
And Your Honor, once I'm done, could I just have it passed?
Okay.
Thank you. Once you made the firearm safe, what'd you do with it?
After that, it was placed in a new property bag.
And then did you take it to property and evidence yourself?
No, ma'am.
And what'd you do with it?
I waited with the firearm until CST, I believe it was CST Conlon, arrived to the neighbor's house and took custody of the firearm.
And a CST, what is that?
Crime scene technician, ma'am.
And were you asked to conduct any further investigation in this case?
No.
Anything else from him? I don't have any other questions. Thank you, Detective.
Thank you.
All right, if we could go ahead and publish State 17. Mr. Taylor, hold on one second. They're publishing State 17.
Thank you.
May I see a copy of it, Ron?
Of course. You can see the actual exhibit. All right, cross-exam.
Afternoon, Detective.
Good afternoon, sir.
I think we can agree that your testimony pretty much revolved around the firearm.
Yes, sir.
You have experience with firearms.
Yes, sir.
There's various reasons why a handgun such as this might jam, correct?
Might jam, but what was with the firearm was not consistent with a jam, sir.
Okay.
The firearm was just slightly out of battery, which means that the slide was not locked to the rear.
And that's the exclusive reason for it to have been in the condition that it was, you think?
There's multiple reasons why the slide wouldn't go to the complete forward position,
That's what I
but
want.
what was with the firearm was not would be consistent with a jam. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, so let's concentrate on the slide.
Yes, sir.
Are there various reasons why the slide would have been in that position?
Yes.
Is one of those reasons, Detective, someone who is not holding the gun firmly enough?
One of them can be if the way that the firearm reacts with recoil, especially with a pistol, is when the firearm is shot, it has to be firmly held in place for the slide to actually be able to use its own force to push back, eject around, and load a new one, sir.
Okay, and as a relative expert with firearms, you go to the range regularly, I would assume?
Pretty decently, sir.
All right, and you make certain when you fire a pistol that you are holding it firmly enough so that that doesn't happen?
I do, yes.
Okay, that comes with practice,
Yes,
and that comes with knowledge of the firearms.
I would say so.
So if somebody were a neophyte in the actual firing of the firearm and was scared and petrified, if they weren't holding it tightly enough, that slide could end up in the position that you found it in.
It could, but I think the thing that normally happens more commonly when it comes to a pistol and a grip being weak is that the round is still going to fire, but what happens is that the slide goes backwards, but it doesn't fully eject the round, which causes something that's called a stovepipe. So the best way that I can explain that is that the firearm wants to load a new round of ammunition into the chamber, but the old round has to come out first. So what happens as the chamber is coming back, it actually goes forward, and then the shell casing that it wanted to eject gets stuck in that slide, so it can't go forward anymore.
Okay. And one of the other ways would be, as we discussed,
It could be, yes, sir.
Yeah.
It could be ammunition, a spring, various things.
failure to hold it tightly.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. No further questions.
Redirect?
No, Judge, thank you.
Can this witness be released?
Yes, Judge.